Hello again, friends. Episode 6 of Subaru Legacy Engine into a Forester. This is the 6th time we've done a Legacy engine in one of these babies. I ordered the engine and it isn't here yet, but it's got 36,000 miles on it. The one that's coming. This car's got 135,000 and the oil ran out. And she started hammering. It doesn't look like we've aerated the block. I did pressure wash this off, so it looks a lot better than it did. So step by step in this thing, what we're gonna do first, there's a few preliminaries we have to do before we get started pulling the engine. We have to remove this one because it's shot. We're gonna get underneath. We're gonna take the 2 engine mount nuts off, the 6 exhaust manifold nuts off, remove the O2 sensors. There's 2 of them, the plugs, so we can have this wire free. Take the fans out and drain all the coolant out. And then we will move in the engine mount bolts that hold it to the transmission. And then it should come out. Okay, so the engine's on the hook. Before I do anything, I'm going to take these bolts out and take this flex plate off because that's got to go to the new engine. And once I put this on the stand, that'll be covered up. So we're going to do that, and we're going to take these engine mounts off because we got to use those. And it'll be easier to get them off before it's on the stand. Here's the empty hole. I did not want to let loose of this torque converter. It was kind of stuck on there, but that's out. Okay, so far I've removed the harnessing from all the sensors and all the fuel injectors, getting the electronics all ready. This main base harness we're going to have to reuse on the new engine. Also, this coolant crossover pipe we're going to have to use on the new engine. I'm going to use my old coil packs. I'm going to use these TGV solenoids and the magnet behind there. We're going to create a hybridized mix of this TGV setup with the new TGV setup, which I'll explain later. We've got to remove 2 pins here and switch them because these valves turn in reverse on the other engine. I believe I've explained that before. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to use this on the new engine. We're going to use the new intake manifold that comes on the engine. We're going to use the old throttle body because it's the same. Or I'm sorry, the new throttle body. It really doesn't matter. Which we'll get there when the engine arrives, but it's not even here yet. I'll walk you through some of that later today. So, kind of getting stuff ready. First thing, took this pulley off. The front takes a 22 millimeter. And I used this because my battery impact wouldn't do it. And I don't have, well, I might have the proper tool to get in those holes, the little holes, and hold that pulley while I break the bolt loose. But if you've got high powered air, it helps. Just zing right out of there. Okay, I'm gonna take this front cover, the timing cover off because I need to use this old one on the new engine. And so I'm coming along here and I'm taking out all the 12 millimeter head bolts. Oh, there's one under there still. And then there's like 5 10 millimeter head bolts there. Bing, bing. There's one, and there's one, and there's one. So we're gonna zing them out. I use my battery impact. A lot of folks will say, get a piece of cardboard and stick them through the cardboard in the proper order so you know which one's going which holes. I just throw them in a pile, but that's probably not the kosher way. So I've got all the bolts out. Now, to pry this off, there's a couple spots here. There's a spot there you can get in with the bar and kind of break it. Break it loose. There we go. And then there's a spot underneath here. There's right where this tab is. There's a spot. Oh, this is better right there. Right by the water pump. You can get under there and break it loose. Oh man. Missed the pan, criminy days. Let this drain a bit. The next step here, once you're under this cover, is these 3 bolts can come out on both intake cam drivers. And this tone wheel that has the notches, indented notches, need to go onto the new engine, which has the notches or the little tab that sticks out, and the sensors read them differently, as I've stated. There is a little snap ring on this piece. You can sort of see it. That needs to come off before this tone wheel will come off. So if you have a little tiny flathead screwdriver, you can kind of wiggle in there and pry it. There's just no real good way to do it without dinking around and finally popping it off. Okay, engine came. Here it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to unhook all of the wiring and all of that stuff. I'm not going to use these coil packs. I'm not going to use this EGR, or this, EGR. I am going to use this intake manifold. I'm going to use those tumble generator valve solenoids, not the ones that say Denso. And I'm going to use this little fuel purge canister. I'm going to use that off the old one as well. We'll need to take this throttle body off and put it on here. Sometimes these come with them. This one did not. Look at how clean this looks. 36,000 miles this thing had on it. Shipped with tax for 790 bucks. Riddle me that. You can't find a good EJ25 non-turbo engine for under 1,500 bucks online anymore. And yet we can get an FB25 out of a 16 Legacy with 36,000 miles for $800. I just don't get it. Intake manifold removed from the old engine. We need this wiring harness. Also, and then we will need to remove this coolant crossover because we will need it over there. And we'll need this hose as well to go with it. Not this little shorty. Got the intake manifold off and the coolant crossover pipe of the old engine. New engine. This is where the knock sensor goes toward the back. The new engine has it on the front. I'm going to put the one from the old engine where it's supposed to go, and we're going to remove him, get rid of it. I'm going to put new O-rings here. That's a common coolant leak area. I use a John Deere part number T78313. It's just a code 62 flange O-ring for hydraulic fitting, but it works really good. Okay, so another thing we need to do, we need to address the situation of these rocker covers. You can take these rocker covers off and put the Forester rocker covers on the Legacy engine and use your old coil packs and boots like nothing ever happened. And it's always good to reseal your rocker covers anyway. However, this engine only has 36,000 miles and the boots were dry when I pulled them out, and I really don't want to disturb that. So we're going to leave them as is. We can still use our own coil packs. However, since this is a little deeper hole, we need to take the boots off of the coil packs that came out of it and put them on the old coil packs to get them to reach the spark plug. And then we'll also need to put some sort of a spacer. I've just used a nut in the past in between the coil pack and this. Otherwise, when you draw that up tight, that coil pack will kind of bow like this. It just doesn't fit. So you would need to space it out. I think that's what I'm going to do on this one. It's a shame that this engine was in a car that got wrecked. Just look at it. Just look at how clean it is. It looks like it was just built yesterday. But it will live on. It will live on. One more thing here I want to cover. This is the cover off of the new engine that I'm not using. But one thing I always replace is this new front main seal here, because while it's off, that's the time. I don't always replace the rear seal because it's a low mild engine, and if it's not leaking, I don't really always. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. However, when you're in here, before you put the old cover on the new engine, always take all these Phillips head screws out and pull this oil pump housing off. Behind there, there's a little gear that pumps the oil. And oftentimes, when you buy a car with an engine that's knocking and hammering real bad, there's a lot of metal shavings and debris that end up down in this oil pump. And I always take this apart and clean it off. And it's the same as this new one. And if your old one's chewed up and in bad shape, you can always take this apart, take the gear and the ring out of there, and put that in your old front timing cover assembly to put back into the new engine. Just something to note. While you're in here, now's the time to do it. Okay, we've got these tone wheels switched over from the old engine to the new one. I've cleaned up the surface here where the cover seals. And I've got the new O-rings for here, for here, for here, and finally for here. We've got the John Deere O-rings underneath of this coolant crossover pipe, and this is bolted down with the EGR from the old engine. And now we're going to glue the cover on and move forward. There it is. The new cover install is done. You can see some of that white Hylamar oozing out all the way around. Don't forget the 5 10mm headed bolts. And then the rest of the 12mm headed bolts all the way around the perimeter. And underneath, there's a whole slug of them. We've got all the electrical hooked back up. Coil packs from the old engine. I had to use a small nut, and behind is a spacer, and the boots off of the coils for the new engine on the coils from the old engine, so that the coils would reach, since we kept the valve covers on. Got everything hooked. I'm using the dipstick off of the new engine, so we had to remove that from the new cover because we used the old cover. Replaced that, put a new O-ring in there. I also put some silicone in there to keep it from leaking. Got a new filter on, got the damper pulley on. This hose from the old engine comes. Next, we're going to put the intake manifold on and address the tumbler valve situation. Okay, this is the intake manifold from the legacy engine. We are going to use it. This is the throttle body from the Forester, and this EGR or whatever pipe is off the Forester. That has to come over. All of this has to come over from the Forester as well. This one is just different. And what I do is I leave it all hooked so I don't forget how these hoses go. And I take this bolt out of here and just pull this whole assembly through. And that hose there and everything just slips right between those intake runners. And then I slip it back in to the new one this way. All right, now this is gonna get ugly, okay? So hang on tight. I'm going to link to the Grassroots Motors forum. A lot of conversation on there that I was a part of as to how to address this because these runners shut the opposite of the ones on the old engine. One way is open, the other way shut. On the Forester, it was backwards, shut, open. So we need to use the black magnet off of the Forester assembly, but this gear off of the Legacy assembly. And we also have to go into the harness and reverse a couple of wires, and that'll get us started. This is the magnet off of the left side of the old engine, and it has to go to the right side of the new engine. And same way with the right side, it goes to the left side as far as magnets go. And we will discard this white magnet, and then we have to put the right size washer in order to space the black magnet out. Also, we're going to be retiming this magnet. So that is notched. It'll only go on that square shaft one way, so we have to hog this out with some kind of a drill bit or a stepper bit to make it round so we can adjust it to where we need to be. So here's the stepper bit I used, and I just rounded that hole out. It's the same size hole, it's just rounded instead of squared off. Here's the one that goes on the left side. B should go on the driver's side, A should go on the passenger side. And I'm going to hit them with some brake and parts cleaner to get some of those shavings off. Starting with the driver's side, we're going to mock this up. You put this on, this tumble valve actuator from the old engine. And where that little rib is, you mark that on that steel spot right there. And that is where your magnet is going to have to line up inside when you tighten it all down. So what I've done now is I've got two washers here, the thick one that was under there, and then I added underneath this other one that's not quite as thick, like so. And I marked here this on this steel where this magnet here, when this gear is completely this way and that tab is locked up against your lock tab, this should be right there. Bang. Moving on to the right side, I mock this up here, and right where that little fin is on the solenoid, I mark that there as my point of reference. So it's tedious, but at the end you want it to look like this. You want that gear to just about be perfectly across from the magnet on both sides. And if it's not right, you'll have engine codes, and then you adjust. But it's a real pain in the car, so I'm trying to get it adjusted now. Are you recording?
Yep.
Okay, so we need to switch these wires 4 and 5 around to tell those actuator motors to go the other way. So in order to do that, we get in here with a little screwdriver and you pop this locking plate out, and then you find the 4 and 5 and you stick that little screwdriver down in here and you pry that tab, and then that wire will pop right out of there, and you just pop them out the back. Let's see if I can do it on camera. There's one. I had to watch a YouTube to learn how to de-pin one of these, and now I've got to have a YouTube on how to de-pin one of these. It's kind of funny. Okay, so then you just switch them around. Snap it into place. Boom. And then just like that, you put this little job back on. Straight. That's one done. Okay. It's ready to drop in the hole. All the electricals are hooked up. All of the hoses are hooked up. Intake manifold is hooked up with our tumble generator valve fix. No excess harnessing for that. No tumble generator valves off in limbo land over here. Boom. It's gonna be beautiful. Also, lest we not forget, we always check that hole in the back of the crankshaft just in case somebody busted the torque converter off inside trying to get the engine out. Oh, we're clean. Otherwise, this thing wouldn't bolt up tight against the torque converter. It'd be held out, and you'd be like, what? Why won't it go together? Okay, exhaust is bolted up underneath. Engine mounts are bolted up underneath. Engine to transmission bolts are mounted. Just got to hook up the O2 sensors down there and the lower radiator hose, and then the bottom is done. And then it's just all topside work. Got a little bit of an exhaust leak down here. I think when I put that exhaust manifold gasket in, I might have tweaked it a little. So we might have to put a new one in, or we'll address it. We got to get it up on ramps, but it's running really good. The engine did send a code for the intake manifold runner control stuck open bank 1. This is a permanent code for coolant temp circuit low. So that one will eventually go away. But this one here, I need to readjust my magnet. When I did that, it must not have taken well. But the one on the driver's side's good, so that was a success. Okay, so down here, where this EGR pipe goes, there's a stud sticking out right there. Right there. That nut goes on. There's one on each side. And I think that's where the leak's coming from, because when I pulled this, I tried to take the nut out on the other side because the gasket I thought was bad. The whole stud came out, and I thought I had it all tight, but I don't think it was tight because my nut was run out of thread on my stud. So I'm going to put a little bolt in there instead to get her drawn up tight. Engine codes are gone. Address that tumble valve generator situation. That's done. Got the console back. Fixed my exhaust leak. And all right, here's the old engine. Done for. The legacy engine lives. And we've gotten rid of the engine codes for the tumble valves. Bank 1, I had to do a little maneuvering and reposition the magnet. So I started up, the codes immediately went away. So now we have no codes. I've got a sweet TomTom radio here. It's never seen anything like that, TomTom. But it's all back together and running great. I'm gonna put some miles on it.